I'm Bridgette Williams, Executive Director of the Heavy Constructors Association. We are a heavy and highway general contractor organization. And basically what we do is we clear the way for economic development to be done in the greater Kansas City area. We are one of two associations in the country that cover multiple states. So that's what we do.
How'd you get your start? How'd you get involved in the construction industry?
So I answered an ad in the newspaper for a part-time receptionist at the Greater Kansas City AFL-CIO. At that time, we were in the middle of an economic downturn, and there were about 300 people that had applied for the job. And so I applied on the last day and ended up getting offered the position. And that kind of started the track to the Heavy Constructors.
That's awesome. Answered an ad. That is awesome.
Yeah.
So I know that you eventually became the president of that organization.
So
the first African American, the first woman, and the youngest person to ever be appointed to that spot.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about kind of your climb from a receptionist to that position?
So I started out as the receptionist, and then I moved up to the Director of Communications. And then from there, I started doing the accounting. My major in college was television and radio broadcasting. I did a little play-by-play for football, because I got it like that. But I ran track. I went to school on a track scholarship. So part of our work study was we had to work the football games in some form, and then they had to work our track meets. And so I actually did some of the play-by-play for the radio station for football games. So when the Director of Communications became available at the AFL-CIO, I jumped at it. So I went from there to accounting. My minor was in accounting. And from there to political director of the AFL-CIO, where I ran a lot of campaigns for people who were interested in running as an advocate for the union movement. And at that time, my boss was forced to resign, and a few people came to me and asked if I would be interested. And initially I said no. And after I thought about it, I went home, I talked to my mom, I talked to my husband. They both said, don't do it, so I did it. And won the election 4-1. And that's when I found out I was the first African American, the first woman in the country to hold the position, and the youngest.
How did that prepare you for your current position as the executive director?
So I was president for 15 years, and it really, through that 15 years, there were a lot of battles. There were a lot of firsts. So I actually made my contribution to growing the labor movement because I had 4 kids while I was, president of the AFL-CIO. And so it was a lot of first for even the men on the board, because they had never really dealt with a female leader who was actually still having children. And so just dealing with maternity leave and things of that nature was a real culture shock for many. So it actually shaped my ability to be able to negotiate and maneuver through change, even when it's the first time for the change myself. And I think it prepared me to, if one avenue doesn't work, there's always other ways to accomplish what the intended outcome is. So I feel like that, there were a lot of election battles. There was one election where another woman had run against me for the position. I ran for the position every 4 years, and the national kept making us rerun the election. And so after the 3rd time I had to run the election, Jesse Jackson Many African American advocates from the area came in and did a march and called the national on it and said, you know, you either make this right or, you know, there's going to be consequences. So it taught me how to fight. It taught me how to fight in many different ways. And it, you know, fighting's not always with your fist, but it certainly taught me how to defend myself and build confidence.
You talked a little bit about kind of the challenges of some of these guys, maybe for the first time, having a woman in leadership that they're answering to and having to deal with things like maternity leave and some different things. And then you mentioned having to, you know, learn how to really fight kind of for yourself. What challenges do you feel like you had to face, maybe that some male counterparts wouldn't have to face in addition to those things throughout your career?
You know, just being a woman, you know, garnering that respect at the table. It can be a bit overwhelming when you walk into a room and there's 15 guys, all of them white guys. You're the only African American and the only female. You can tend to get looked over. So you have to figure out, as a woman, I had to figure out how to garner that respect, that when I was at the table and when I had something to say, that people were willing to stop and listen. You know, a lot of times being African American or being female or being African and American and female got you to the table, but it's certainly not what keeps you at the table. So, you know, we have to figure out a way to not only keep us at the table, but to expand the table for more to sit around it.
Okay. So you talk about the expansion of and kind of how to get more women as well as more African Americans at the table. Where do you see the construction industry as a whole in regards to that in 5, 10, 15?
You know, I think the industry as a whole is really trying to do better in both the minority and the female capacities. It's not going to happen overnight, but because there are so many construction workers that are at retirement age, it's almost at critical mass, and so there really is more of a opening for more women and for more minorities to come in and actually be a part of a industry that pays great wages and has incredible benefits. So you know, in 5 to 10 years, hopefully we'll be better, but I don't think we'll be where we need to be, but I think we'll be making great strides.
We're talking a little bit about NAWIC and WCOE. Would you mind just kind of maybe just a broad blanket statement kind of on those organizations and what they do in the industry?
Well, I think the crux of it is their goal is to bring, WCOE is to bring women business leaders together to address issues of the common good for them, to kind of have a vehicle to come together and talk about things that women face as business owners and use best practices to address them. And NAWIC is a lot for women who are actually feet on the ground, who actually work at the construction site to do the same thing, but just for, you know, those that are experiencing issues in the workforce, to actually, you know, you share best ideas to address issues that may occur.
Okay. So we've talked kind of about some of those resources that are available to women that are kind of coming of age and coming into the industry. Would you consider, or would you be able to name someone, a role model or a mentor that really sticks out in your head, kind of aided your development?
Well, you know, it was several. And so the thing was, for me, because there wasn't a me in the industry, there really wasn't a female role model that I could look to, except that there was a lady in California, Amy Dean, who was coming into the AFL-CIO in her area at the same time, and so around the same time. So we were able to kind of, give each other ideas in terms of how to deal with issues. But, for the most part, it was really a lot of the men leaders, Louis Wright, who was the president of the firefighters, and Les Williams, who was president of the laborers at the time, were people who were willing to sort of embrace me and help me maneuver through those issues at that time, and provide, real hardcore advice. I mean, I think what I would tell anybody, Mike Montgomery was another one. He was head of the United Way, or not head of the United Way, but he was labor's advocate at the United Way at the time. But they were really, if you want to be a successful leader, you cannot surround yourself with sycophants. In other words, people who are going to tell you what you want to hear. You have to surround yourself with people who don't think like you, who don't move like you, who don't act like you, so that you have those real hardcore ideas and feedback. So when you make the decision, you're making that decision based on all this other input, rather than people telling you what they think they want to hear. And I tell you, I had plenty of people telling me what I didn't want to hear. So I think it helped shape me.
At what point in time did you decide, whether it was at the AFL-CIO or somewhere else, that you decided that you wanted to make a career out of?
So I never decided. I always say I didn't find the career found me. I had no idea what the AFL-CIO was until I answered the ad in the newspaper. So as I was working my way up through the ladder, thinking that being the political director of the organization was probably as high as I could go, then the opportunity presented itself to run for president of the organization. And I think it was at that point that I decided, this is it. I could have very easily walked away and ended up probably in an office somewhere. But I think it was about being willing to take a risk and being okay with being told no.
So I know you mentioned the way in California that you kind of bought as you were coming up. Do you feel a difference when you're dealing with women rather than men in the industry, or is it really much?
I think once women get over the initial shock that there's someone like them that's leading the way in the industry, not really. I mean, the questions are the same. The process is the same. I think what is different is women tend to second guess themselves a little more. And so if there's anything, women tend to want to talk to you off to the side and get advice once they know that you're there. But, not really.
You mentioned that you have 4 children.
Mm-hmm.
You've been married for 32 years?
Yes.
How do you balance?
Very long time.
Yeah. How do you balance your career and your family?
It's kind of like Nike. You just do it. Some days I look back and I'm thinking, how did we do that? It really comes from having a supportive network on the home front. I'm the oldest of 7. We're all here. My mom is here. My dad passed away a while ago, but even when he was here, when he was alive, my mom and dad were tremendously helpful in helping us with the kids when I had to go out of town or, had to work late. You also have to have a really supportive partner. My husband was extremely, able and willing to, when I couldn't be at an event, he was at an event. So we would do the divide and conquer a lot. With 4 kids, both of us can't be at everything. So if 2 of them had an event the same night, he'd go to one and I'd go to the other. But I have always made family the priority. So, there are some instances where work did interfere with family, activities, and that happens, but it wasn't on a regular basis. So, we just muddled our way through it, and we think we've done pretty well.
So I'm going to wrap it up with my favorite question that we've been asking.
Okay.
Which is probably a daily situation for you. But if you had a room full of male colleagues and just a microphone and free reign to say whatever you want, what would you tell them? Plug your ears, Ryan. Oh, I've heard.
I would say, now listen, I'm always right. And I am only conveying this to you because I want you to agree that I'm always right.